seat, sip some wisdom, and stay a while. This is the Prosperity Lounge, where growth gets personal. Step inside, we're breaking chains.
Oh, hey, I'm live. How's everybody doing? Great episode with Chris there. Just finishing up the chat. We had a lively chat on the premiere, and I appreciate you all hanging out, coming along, doing this Monday, Wednesday, Friday deal with now what we're doing. I got Chris in the green room getting ready to come on. We're going to do a live Q&A. Hopefully everybody gets in here soon. So I'm just gonna ramble for a second or two. It was funny. We were talking, and I'm sure we'll talk when we come on. This episode that we just did was way back in October, and it feels like it was just yesterday. But I was just watching myself back, and you can see some of the growth just in how we're doing the channel, how we're doing the show, and it's been fantastic. If you keep working at something, you can, there's definitely growth that happens. So let's see, we got some comments here. Hey, Emmy, thanks for joining over. Perfect. All right, Chris, I'm going to bring Chris in here. Chris, I'm going to say, Chris, that I practiced about 1,200 times your last name when I did my intro, because I know I screwed it up during the podcast. And I heard myself say it wrong again at the beginning of the episode. And that's sticking with me right now. So I'm going to go with Migura.
There you go. Nailed it.
Chris Migura from Lagos.com is with me, CEO of Lagos. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. Good to see you again. Like you said, we were just joking. It felt like it was just yesterday.
I know.
You get through Thanksgiving, you get through the Christmas break, you get through the New Year, and I can't believe we're talking about the year being 2026.
It is amazing how fast time flies when you're older.
Absolutely does. I had that conversation with my father-in-law over the break. He's retired, and he said, you think time slows down? It actually doesn't. It speeds up.
It's true. That is true. So we had a great conversation. It was one of these things where I didn't know what to expect. I was a little nervous talking to somebody of your stature. But I look back at myself and I was like, man, I didn't really look nervous, but it's one of those things where you get a little freaked out a bit. I like to be as prepared as possible. And I got to say, your team did a great job of preparing me ahead of time for you. I had some conversations where people sat down and I was like, what was your name? Google real fast, try to get something together. Okay, go. But I had a great conversation with you. We were able to lean into a lot of the faith-based economics and purpose-driven investment, and also just kind of being outward with your faith in your life and your business. And this was right after Charlie Kirk's assassination, where people were doing that on a more regular basis. After that, there was a lot of people that were faith forward in public about it, and now not so much anymore as the tide has rolled back. I wanted to ask you a couple questions. One of the takeaways I learned from our conversation was that faith doesn't compete with profit. It kind of directs the breakthrough. And what people don't understand is that faith isn't a limitator of growth. It's a framework for making better decisions under pressure. How you frame it basically is one of the big themes of that, sharpening leadership. When decisions get difficult for you or uncomfortable, how does faith show up for you in that CEO seat?
Well, I think it comes down to, just take what our values are here as a company. And I think those are every individual's got their own set of values, and so how do you stay true to those things? And I think maybe just to elaborate just a bit on your comment of faith and profit. I think it depends. I stand by what I said before but I said you can still have the best in just because you are faithful to something doesn't mean you're guaranteed, for example, that you're going to make a profit, right? You may go
Yeah.
make a stock investment with the best intentions of as to why you're doing that, and it may just be a complete flop. But I think where there's a real balance between values and then just sort of faith informed decision making is to say filtering decisions through faith doesn't mean that it comes without solid sound judgment. I talked a little bit about that when we met, just in terms of me evaluating taking this role. Now, I applied a little bit lighter level of judgment and analysis to that than I have, traditionally. But from my
Mhm.
perspective, it's the foundation, and that foundation of faith and what the values that I think exist, both say biblically, is where that disciplined decision making really rests, because we reason over things, and if you have the right motivation as to how you're evaluating things and you have the right conviction based on those values, then really the analysis, it just contextualizes for me how you approach decision making. And I think there can be different motives, there can be different reasons and pressures for things, and we just try to remain very consistent to that at Logos. That says we understand the customers we serve. We want to serve our employees really well in terms of the engine that puts together what our users want to consume. And then at the end of the day, yes, we have shareholders and we create value for those shareholders, but that is the outcome, right? That's the real outcome of that prioritization of us staying true to our customers and staying true to our employees.
I love that. Uh, Another takeaway I had was that stewardship changes how leaders read financials.
Mm.
Numbers tell a story, but values really determine how leaders interpret and act on them. You talked about financial warning signs leaders often rationalize away.
Mm.
What's one financial signal you think leaders should take more seriously earlier than they usually do?
I may have said this. I think we said this, and I think there's a lot of focus on EBITDA. You've probably heard that metric, EBITDA,
Mm,
earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization is sort of a core operating metric that companies look at. And for a lot of companies, EBITDA approximates to what is cash flow. So to answer your question directly, Joey, I think it's cash. It's cash flow. There are a lot of things that happen from an accounting perspective, from a financial reporting perspective, you know, short-term decision making, long-term decision making, and there's a lot of financial theory out there about how you apply that to make sure that you're not making just short-term trade-offs to optimize your financials that just lead to bigger problems down the road, right? 12 months out, 24 months out, and whatnot.
mhm.
And so at the end of the day, cash, it really is sort of the tell-all. And I think that that's where we've been very disciplined here at Logos, is to look at a really balanced view of it that says we have a plan, we have a budget, that is both revenue and sales and profitability, and a certain amount of cost, obviously cost management that goes into that. But in the end, how does that really equate in terms of cash flow?
Mm,
I think we spoke about this in our time together about the sort of being financially healthy and having some level of cash reserves, whether you're a business or you're an individual, because of the amount of unexpected things that can happen. And being healthy is having that buffer or those reserves, if you will, that allows you to kind of ride those ups and downs that naturally happen in different cycles from a business perspective. And so I think, candidly, it's not to me just the size of the business or the profile of public or private, but cash flow problems can represent, a real dangerous blind spot for some businesses.
How much does how do I word this, Chris? How much does faith or the idea of stewardship lean into the direction a company goes? Like if you're a faith-based leader and you are heavy on stewardship, God owns it all. I don't know, in a
Hmm.
manager form.
Mhm.
It's a different approach than if you're not than not, right? It's if you have the opposite approach as a for-profit or private company, you may be thinking differently as far as the decisions you make or the how you spend the money, how you manage the money. Does that philosophy, I would imagine it's deep at Lagos, being a biblical Bible
Mhm.
platform app. Um, was that something that was there when you got there as well, or something that you maybe doubled down on or learned as well when you got there?
It was here, and I think it depends on different levels. So, I'll use an example. Um, During a tenure I had at one of my previous jobs, I got the opportunity to meet with and go talk to a lot of founder entrepreneur-based businesses. And, a founder may have just a different set of priorities depending on what their, motivation is from a cash flow. So if you're going to, bootstrap the company, you're going to basically reinvest everything you make. Um,
Mhm,
you may have the wherewithal to do that. You could be, if you're a not-for-profit with a certain donor commitment, right? You know how to operate within that and what the metrics are. If you're a for-profit entity, you got different obligations from a private public perspective. I think for us, really what we evolved into is just increasing the transparency throughout the business, just how we perform financially. Because, you know, I like to say that it doesn't really matter what function you have in our company. Every role plays a part ultimately in how we achieve those goals. And from a stewardship perspective, the dollars we invest obviously in vendor expenses and salaries, and we have content that we license, and we pay third parties for that. All of those quote investments we make really at the end of the day are to serve our customers in the best way that we know how. And
mm,
if you every time you go into a budget cycle, this has been universal across every company I've been at. The size of the basket of the asks are always more than what you can actually afford to go do right in the coming year. I mean, I can't. I've never had a budget yet where the request came in smaller than what we were willing to invest in next year. And so I don't think that is unique to for profit, not for profit. Like, you have a constrained set of resources that you have to make decisions on as to how to best go um, dedicate those to different product investments, different market investments to your customers. And we talk about this a lot, but really improving and being focused, laser focused on what our user experience is extremely important. Because, like I said, the employees are the engine behind what we get to deliver, but customers have to choose to partner with us and invest with us. And in the case of Logos, go on that study journey of using technology to grow in light of the Bible. They're making a decision to go with us. There are other places that they can go to do that, and so really earning that trust and then maintaining that with them is critical in terms of how do we direct our investments every year. And we just went through that exercise. We're entering 2026, like we just talked about, which means we
yeah.
closed out 2025. We're a calendar year company, and we had to make some new decisions as we go into next year.
And one of those decisions you probably are leaning into even more so, or you've been leaning into, is AI.
Mm,
Obviously, technology, we talk about technology amplifying wisdom, not replacing it. And this is the situation we find now where there's a lot of people who are using AI to replace their own knowledge, right? It's they're relying on it more than as a guide or a tool and more as a crutch.
right.
Logos's approach to AI shows, at least what I've been seeing, Chris, is that innovation can move forward without abandoning discernment or responsibility. You have this position, how you've positioned your AI as an amplifier, not a substitute for human insight. What are some guardrails that leaders nowadays need to put in place so technology doesn't outpace values?
Mm. Well, there's a lot of things that I don't think you can shortcut, right, just through the use of technology. I mean, you could even go before you just start to talk about AI. There's all sorts of
Mhm.
tools and applications from a software perspective that companies have chosen to invest in to automate certain processes and make things more efficient. But a lot of times it's not just the technology itself. If you just go into a situation like that and implement a piece of technology, more times than not, if you don't really get down to what the root cause of the process was, the technology itself isn't going to go solve that issue.
Right.
And so I think that there's a similar vein of that in AI. I read some different things. I don't know if it was BCG or McKinsey. I can't remember who published some of these things. And some of the early stats are, um, they're left to some interpretation as to how much productivity is visibly apparent relative to the amount of the investments that have been made. But you could look at it, look at education, right?
Hmm.
Academia has had to really think differently about how AI is used, not only from a student perspective, but from a faculty perspective. It is a very useful tool in a lot of different ways in a lot of different disciplines. You highlighted there for a second, or at the beginning of that, how we have chosen to implement that here at Logos, and we're still on an early journey of how we're going to leverage that. But we've tried to be very transparent with what we intend for it to do versus not do. And there
Hmm.
are, comparing it to other open models out there is definitely different, if you will, versus what we've chosen to do here. As you know, we have a platform that has a set of features to it, but it also is highly rich in the content that we offer. And so whether it be the content that our users are able to surface and use through their subscription with us, or content that they purchase, libraries, commentaries, books that they've made purchases on for years and years, being able to use our features to better surface that content is really been a focus point for us. So how do we help them go find things easier, but at the same time, let them see the full benefit of the investments they've made with us in that content? And yes, there's deep study that goes into that and deep research that goes into that. And we
Hmm.
want to be very careful, if you will, to not circumvent that. And yeah, you can certainly go out to ChatGPT, you can go to Gemini, you can go to different places, right, and ask theological questions of it. I don't spend an enormous amount of my time candidly looking to see what's right and what's wrong in those platforms. What I do look at is what is our strategy for how we want to improve our customer experience and help our customers better find access to and surface insights out of the content that they've chosen to invest with us.
Excuse me. I can imagine in your field, like when I'm doing marketing for a company and we use ChatGPT to kind of, input some parameters around their industry or their ideal customer. If I just do a blanket statement like, "Hey, I need an ideal customer profile for plumbers in my area," you're gonna if you put it in and I put it in, we're probably getting pretty close to the same answer, right?
Mhm.
But if I put in something more specific of what I'm looking for and dial it in, and you just put the generalization, we'll get completely different answers. So it's a lot of times it's the input to get the right output. I can imagine in your industry being in the faith-based space where you're cultivating all these works of literature and the Bibles and stuff, that I know for me, Chris, when I have a question about what does this mean, like if you go to like, I'll just use the most famous one, John 3:16.
Mhm.
If I Google that, I'll get 12 different answers from 12 different sources, from 12 different versions and 12 different interpretations and uh, uh, transcriptions.
Mhm.
How does I don't want to put you on the spot, but how does Lagos rectify something like that? If I'm going to go in there and I'm going to look something up and you're in a closed system, are we cultivating everything from there and then getting it generalized? Hey, we took all the sources and this is the most likely output of what your interpretation is, or are we going to get similarities?
Well, a couple things. One, we're not designing it where we want to provide an interpretation or interpret
Ah,
on your behalf. And there's
good.
still obviously a level of, we want to surface insights that come from the content that we either have available that could be purchased. So, for example, you may not necessarily own the content, but we're still going to surface that content if it's relevant within, like you said, the ecosystem of what we offer in our store,
Hmm.
while at the same time being able to continue and make it easier to say that if you want to refine the scope of that content you can search, for example, maybe you want to refine it to certain authors that you put a lot of trust into, right? Because I mean, even in the Christian space, there isn't universal agreement on every single item, right?
Right, right.
Interpreting the Bible. And from my perspective, that's what makes biblical study so exciting and so interesting is looking at the original language and understanding the context historically and what could be meant in this language versus this, and what was the context of when that was being written. Like that's one of the fascinating things about Bible study.
Mm.
And so I think, just to come back to what you just said there, is we want to surface we want to surface insights from the content you have that you can go further research. And there's a very distinguishing factor, and I think some of the AI tools are doing this now, but we will cite each of those resources with the response that comes back in our tools. And
Hmm.
so let's say you get a paragraph back. I think I mentioned this even when we met, like you went in to understand what the top, biblical guidance on how to approach anxiety. And it's going to give you a set of responses in our tool, in our application, but that's going to cite every one of those. And so if you found something interesting that came back from that insight and you want to look at it further or research it further, it's going to give you a site specifically to that resource. And it's going to take you to that resource in your library with us if you own it. And if you don't, it's going to give you the option to go purchase it so that you could go dig into it deeper.
Cool. I like that. Awesome. Another takeaway I had from our episode time together was who you serve shapes how you lead. You kind of got into that a little bit in the beginning. When we first started, serving pastors, educators, ministry leaders changes how Lagos thinks about impact, growth, and responsibility. So you're leading a company where customers are already serving others. Does that reality change the way you think about growth and scale?
Mm. Well, first off, I think there's a very important underlying piece to what you just said. The the users that we get to serve, right, are involved in so many different areas in ministry, and we take that really seriously because that comes with a high level of responsibility as to what they are entrusting Logos to do and help them do to serve those different ministries. And so I think, when you and I talked about this a little bit, and I think about, sort of, prosperity, or, or even back to the profit discussion about growing at scale,
Hmm.
there's one thing for us to grow. And I think I said to you, you know, we sort of set a big, hairy, audacious goal out there about a year ago that said, well, gosh, we'd love to go touch 1 billion lives. Why not? Right. I mean, let's set ourselves on something
Why
very
not?
big. We think
Yeah.
we have an application and a tool that can change people's lives. And how do we leverage that technology on a much broader scale and make it more available? There's so many different ways to go serve that depending on region and geography and advancement in these different countries and regions versus others. And so, yes, prosperity is certainly important by that. And I tried to allude to that in my comments that said, I think that if we are executing on our mission and we're doing it well, then I think financially things will take care of themselves. And that benefit will be there. And so really what it comes down to is to come back to that, what your point about the people we serve that they get to serve is what's the impact? What's the impact that we have? Because the greater scale of that impact is I think really is we have a lot of employees I mean, like really that's what motivates us. The
Hmm.
customer feedback we get, I mean, I think there was, either it was on your post or a different one I saw this week. I had a customer come in and just talk about him being a longtime user and just how much he loves using our product. That kind of feedback really resonates with our employee base. At the same time, rightfully so, we have customers that have other critiques and other requests of things that they'd like to see us do better. And I said this to you when we met originally, is feedback is feedback. That can come from a customer, that can come from a vendor, it can come from a shareholder. The feedback is originating for a reason. And so we got to take it seriously and really look at it and understand what do we need to
Hmm.
address, how we go to market, or how we engage, commercially with the user, or how we present ourselves on the website, or how we're improving usability of the application. Like all of those things are just relevant feedback to how we engage with our user base.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the other takeaways, I have a couple more here. CFO to CEO transition. I wrote, requires discernment, not just data. Leadership at the top requires wisdom that can't be spreadsheeted.
Yeah.
You lived in both numbers and vision. So my main question in this takeaway was, what leadership muscle did you have to build that surprised you when you became CEO?
I think I alluded to this a little bit when I
Yeah.
told you how I came to the decision to accept the role. But look, I look for spiritual discernment on all of these opportunities that I get. Getting to meet with you, getting to be here within this, podcast today. There's a level of responsibility not only in representing Logos, but also what my beliefs are. And so I think to distinguish the two of those differently, Joey, is in my comfort zone of being a CFO. I don't want to say that I could sort of work on autopilot on some stuff from a financial perspective, but you can kind of get in the mode, right, where it's just very second nature. Analyze P&L results, look at the balance sheet, look at a 5-year plan and diagnose those things. There's a whole different level set. And I'm not saying that this wasn't important to me as a CFO, because I try to be very mindful of it. But really, every opportunity I have, every problem that we have to go challenge as a business, like, God, what am I to learn from this opportunity or this challenge? And, really at the end of it, whether it be my external feedback and the opportunity to speak externally like I get to do today, or speaking to our employee base, is like, how do I foster things in a way that we're going to help our users be more successful with us, and our employees have a better experience with us? Because those two things definitely complement each other. You've heard the expression that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
And, as we just rolled out 26 and we talked to our employee base about the things that we wanted to focus on this year, I want to continue to reiterate that, because that employee base, like I told you, like, that is the engine of what we build and what we deliver that allows our users to see the value of using Logos. And so if I was to tell you there was just a pivot, it's just being much more cognizant and mindful from a faith perspective, what my faith is, to what the purpose is of what I can do with the opportunity that's been presented to me.
Perfect. Love that. Got 2 more takeaways for you, Chris, and
Okay.
and then I'll let you go for the evening.
Okay.
Number 6, purpose is proven in trade-offs, not statements. And I said mission only matters when it influences hard choices, especially when profit is on the line. But you, as I'm reading that back, there's something that you said during the conversation that was, this might have been when you were interviewing, the story about interviewing for the job, when you said something about mission first, profit follows, summarizing a little bit. A lot of organizations say they're purpose driven.
Yeah.
But what's a real world example where purpose maybe faced a harder but better decision?
Well, we were talking earlier about the difference between a not-for-profit and a for-profit.
Yeah.
We can debate a lot of times the decisions we make and say, okay, well, would we just be doing that because we're trying to optimize profits, or do we think it's helping us better serve? And I touched on this a little bit. We have a set of values. We re-implemented a set of values at Logos a couple of years ago that I think have been an excellent guidepost, that are guardrails, if you will, to just how we approach the job, how we approach our customer interactions. And that is: serve wholeheartedly, forge ahead, stay curious, own our impact, speak truth and love, and venture together. And if we stay true to that set of values in everything that we do, and we understand at the end of the day that we have a set of customers to serve, the financial benefits will come from us doing that well. And if we can do those things well, then I have faith that, if it's meant to be, then we're going to do well financially as well. But first and foremost, we've got to serve our customers well.
So I'm going to ask a favor. Can you email me that set of those values? Because I think that's repeatable, and it's something that I want to hang on my wall when I'm doing my show here and stuff.
They're on my sheet right here. Yes, I have them committed to memory, but I glance at it multiple.
I love that. they're amazing. Those ones you said. It's like it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's in theory in just saying it out loud, right? But putting it into practice is probably that's a little a little difficult. But I love what you said there. That's awesome. Prosperity. Last takeaway I had before we wrap up here. Prosperity is about legacy, not just scale. True
Mhm.
prosperity compounds through impact, trust, and faithfulness over time. One thing that came through clearly in our conversation is how you define prosperity.
Mhm.
Um, how has your definition of prosperity changed as your influence has grown?
As an individual or just as a company?
Let's go to individual first.
I said to you that, part of accepting the role was, Logos has been great to me in the roughly 3 years that I've been here as CFO, and I love working with our employees. I love to see the benefit of what we get to do with our customers. You and I had the privilege of being there on campus with Liberty and just seeing the energy and the excitement. And so, as a steward in the role that I have now, right, I take that really seriously because and again, it doesn't come down to me as an individual, but at the same time, I can make decisions or I can provide guidance or ask things that really get us off track. And so, back to my comment to you about sort of staying true to what my values are, and then really
Mhm.
seeking wisdom and discernment on that. That's a daily, hourly, I can't define the time frame, but it's got to happen all the time because human nature is going to be that, we think we've got this and we think we can control this. And at the end of the day, we can't. And
Yeah.
so, really making sure that, not for me individually, but understanding that we as an organization have a responsibility. And, oh, by the way, for those that go before us, because Logos has been around for over 30 years, and
Mm.
there's been a tremendous amount of effort, blood, sweat, and tears, if you will, that have gone in to build the successful business that has the reach that it does today. And that reach, we have that opportunity to continue to grow and expand that reach. And so, I can't foreshadow the future, but I would just like to say that everything that we're doing today, if we stay true to what our purpose and our mission is here, how do we make sure that this business is around for the next 30 plus years? And,
Yeah.
I mentioned this to you, and I can't go name off all the individuals, individually, but I would just say that there's been a lot of companies that in our space of what we do that haven't made it, and there's been consolidation, where it's been difficult for them financially. We have been blessed to not have, those kind of severe constraints that some businesses have gone through. We face our challenges. I mean, nobody said this was going to be easy, and maybe to the contrary, it's going to be even more difficult because of what we do. But we embrace that opportunity because we know and we see the impact that we can have. The feedback that we get, I told you, I got to meet with students when I was on campus, and just hearing some
Mhm.
of their experiences, and having two college students, two kids that are college students myself. That was very motivating and very invigorating to see that what we do has the impact it does. And that's why we do the hard things that we do, because we understand that it changes lives.
You know, it's
It has the opportunity to change lives by exposing,
yeah,
giving insights into the Bible.
and it's funny too because I just looked at an article from it was late 2025, and year over year, Bible sales always are increasing, and I think it was up 11% up through the end of October of 2025. But I read something that I think even past that through now, it's just there's a hunger and a yearning, and there's a sense of um, the youth in this country, and we saw it on display at Liberty for sure. That generation turning back to faith
Yeah.
and packing churches and packing uh, houses of worship and trying to learn and trying to connect with something. They've been so disconnected in the world with computers and AI and Zoom meetings and
Mhm.
all this. Away. We grew up in a family where we did everything together, and now everybody's together, but we're together now through technology. We're not in the same room. So trying to find something where we can be all, you can find something to connect to.
Mhm.
I think people they're yearning for connection
Mhm.
and they're getting back into the churches. I went to one church recently here and started going again a little bit. And I walked in and I had to stand on the back. of the church in a hallway, kind
Yeah.
of peeking in because every row was full. And this wasn't Christmas, by the
Yeah.
way. This is like October, and
Yeah.
I'm standing there like I can't hear. But
Yeah.
hey, it was great to see all the young people there and just filling the rows up and just getting back to finding what virtue and value is
Mhm.
and starting to live their life that way.
Mhm.
So you guys are in the forefront of being able to provide help with that with
Mhm.
the platform. And I'm going to throw up on the screen here because you guys gave me an awesome QR code
Oh,
here
good. Yeah, there you go.
that I threw up here. So this is for the Lagos trial. I'm going to throw up on the screen too. I should choose my words better. I'm going to put up on the screen. I'm not going to throw up on the screen. I'm going to put up on the screen what it looks like. And basically, you're going to go here. You're going to get a 60-day free trial. That's awesome, guys. Thank you so much. 60-day free trial. You're getting everything here. And we'll go down to see what you got. It looks like it's 60-day free trial. Any of your offerings, which is amazing. Why wouldn't you try the max offering? I think that's what I'm going to do. Just
Good.
get everything.
And well, Joe,
Try
you may
that.
have direct line support to some training too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. I love all that. That's great.
Yeah, I think that look,
Yeah.
our traditional trial runs 30 days. This is a special offer to give people 60 days. People are busy. You come into a motivation to dig deeper in the Word, and that comes at different
Mhm.
time demands. And so we want to make sure that we're giving ample time for people to go explore and learn and see what the power is of Logos to go, dig deeper. I mean, you and I talked about this, I think, a little bit when we were together. The Bible can be daunting and intimidating to some people, and understanding it and being able to take commentaries and be able to search out right in just sort of natural language um, from the Bible questions that people have, which is that's a benefit to what people have seen from Chat GPT is to be able to just throw a question out there and see what comes back. And so without trying to
Mhm.
get overly complex with searching it, we try to enable that in an easy way so that people can unlock and see really what the power is of the word and what there is to learn from it. And I think that, whether it be on our mobile application and our web application or in our desktop application, just being able to see the breadth of that, you'll be able to try that on any three of those platforms. You'll see the benefit of there's a set of content that comes with that trial and with that subscription. So it's not just a software feature set. It also comes with a set of content that comes with that.
The first thing that popped out of my when I'm looking at the middle one here is Greek and Hebrew words. I'm like, oh, is it translated at least for me, or is it, or am I
Well,
going
I
to be
think it's,
having to
I,
be Greek?
Yeah, I mean that's a really a powerful thing. My pastor does that a lot. We make it really easy in Logos to do that. To basically click on a word and say, "Hey, I want to do a word study on this." And what do you think that the original language of that word meaning was?
Wow, that's great. I love this. I just started, and friends of ours are in the chat right now and support the show. They gave me a read the Bible one a day for men. So it's a
Yeah,
daily reading, and they gave it to me a while ago, Chris. And I said, January 1st is the time I start reading. So
perfect.
just like everybody else, I started reading January 1st. So I'm a few days in, and I was able to pick up something over at Liberty. It was this 52-week leadership book where it's one a day. I started reading it, the leadership one, and I read the synopsis and this is great. And then on the top, it gives you where you're supposed to go read the passage first, and then this is the synopsis. And I'm like, I got to do extra reading now because I got to go find the synopsis to read, and then I got at least the answer here or the the summary. But being able to use that tool with the app and kind of you know double down on things like leadership and discipline and stewardship and find those passages that I want to convey in my daily show when I talk about stuff, and just maybe take that passage and make it more of a non-secular version for somebody to understand that I'm not preachy or
Yeah,
preaching to somebody,
yeah.
but having that tool that you guys provide and at least being able to have something like that for me to fall back on and learn from, it's going to be invaluable. going to help me grow as a person and help me grow in the offerings that I'm able to give to people.
Yeah, no,
Helps me
I'd
filter.
love to have, your audience give us a try. It's our pleasure to have the opportunity to be able to do that. We'll meet you where you are. Like I said, iPhone, Android, iPad, desktop, web. I mean, yes, there's, the more you can put on the screen with the complexity of what we can offer is great. But like you said, reading plans. I mean, we have reading plans. We have different translations that you want to look at. And like I said, just taking advantage of those commentaries where you
Hmm.
have an individual or a set of individuals, right, that have possibly for years researched and really expanded on a topic in the Bible, and then been able to provide commentary on that is extremely helpful to people.
Yeah, because those people are a lot smarter than I am on the subject.
You and me both.
I got one last question for you. If you're sitting across from a business owner who wants to lead with faith but is afraid it'll cost them growth, what's some guidance you'd give them? What's something you'd tell them?
I guess I'd first have to question where that fear would come from. I think success can be defined in a lot of different ways, and if we have an opportunity to serve, and I think for us at Logos, as long as God wants to continue to prosper us in that, then the growth is going to come with that. And so I think you were talking about what you were just doing with this beginning of this year, finding as you've learned, there's so many concepts and principles to take from the Bible. You could almost argue everything, right? And I
Right.
mean, every topic, whether it be business, family, personal, individual, mental health, physical, right? There's such a richness in what the Bible has to offer. And so being able to take that, and that's what I thought was fascinating of meeting and talking to so many of those business leaders. And when we were at Liberty, it's
Hmm.
just seeing how they have taken that and applied that within the businesses they have. So I'd look at it and say, there's an expression that says, God has blessed us with our grace. And then the question is, what do we do to seek his favor? And I think that if, you have the opportunity with a business like that, set with a set of core values, driving it from a faith and biblical perspective, then seeing what blessings can come from that.
I love that. Chris, thank you so much for hanging on. We're going to wrap up here. If you got a couple seconds after we end, I just want a quick question for you offline.
Sure.
But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking your time to come on and answer a bunch more questions. Almost do another podcast, essentially. I mean, I can put this up
Yeah.
as another episode with Chris. This is great.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure, Joey. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in your sphere here, sphere of
Yeah.
influence.
Oh,
I love it.
thanks for giving us visibility. We'll take it. We appreciate it.
Well, same. Cheers to that. Good
Yep.
coffee. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you everybody in the chat for being here. Emmy, Noxy Knox, everybody else for doing the mods tonight, making sure everybody was behaving themselves, which they were, which is fantastic. Thank you all. As we say here, until next time. I got to remember my clothes because I usually have it. I usually have it top of my head. Should have it written down like you, Chris. Freedom lives where faith and action meet. The lounge is always open, and so is your next breakthrough. This is the Prosperity Lounge. Everybody have a great night.
Good night.
This is